All right, welcome back to Helms Files Episode 2. For those of you who were here in Episode 1, you know what happened. Quick recap for those who weren't. I just recently competed, well, not too recently, over a month ago now, in the North Island Powerlifting Championships here in New Zealand. And I was now starting a new block of training. The competition went pretty well, but the reality was I had to cut from around 97, 98 kilos all the way down to 93 to make weight. This is the heaviest I've been. However, it's also the heaviest I've been at this body composition. So I made some good bodybuilding gains, but at the same time, I've decided I need to take some time off competing. Also, my hip, which I have FAI, gets bothered by squatting to full depth. So I thought that would also be a good thing to take some time off from competition and really focus on bodybuilding, moving up a weight class to the 105s. I'm probably only going to get to about 100, I have a feeling, based on how much more size I can add while keeping my body fat at a reasonable level. However, that's still fantastic. That's about 220 pounds for the Americans in the audience, which would be by far the best body comp I've had, where I've, probably in the teens, the low teens, while still being that heavy, which is pretty good for a guy my size, 6 foot. And it's been definitely slow progress now that I've been lifting 12 years. But yeah, this is someplace I've wanted to get to for a long time, and I really want to keep the progress going. So what today is going to be looking at a recent block of training that I wrote for myself after the first week out from that competition. It's only a 4-week block because I'm actually going to be leaving the country for two different things. In middle of August, end of August, I'll be going to Oslo for the Academy for Personal Training conference that they hold there every year. Great organization. They do a great job educating personal trainers in Oslo. Very large conference there as well. Hundreds of people show up. Very eager to learn. It's an honor to be there. I went last year. I'll be there with Alan Aragon, Brett Contreras, Brad Schoenfeld, Nick Tuminello, James Krieger, and a bunch of other top-notch presenters. Just great experience. And then from there, once I'm finished, I'll be going all the way to Florida, where I will be doing the final study of my PhD, looking at RPE in a undulating program and comparing it to a percentage 1RM program. And I'll be doing that with Dr. Mike Zerdos at the Florida Atlantic University, and that'll be all the way through November. So I didn't want to write a block of training too long, where it actually took me to the point where I was traveling, because I just don't know what type of schedule I'll be able to adhere to, what I'll have available. So I figured I would write myself a nice overreaching block and then kind of take the travel as sort of a 2 to 3 week deload, basically, where I get in what I can before I get a consistent schedule once I'm settled in Florida and know what the lab schedule will be like and all of that. And then I'll get back into a more concerted, structured program. So anyway, this might be a little dry for some of you guys, but I wanted you to see how I organize my own training. Huge disclaimer is that it would be a terrible idea to try to copy what I'm doing. This is a highly individualized program. My exercise selection is based on injuries I have. My goals as someone who is coming back from a long period of powerlifting to finally do my pro debut as a natural bodybuilder after finishing my PhD, which should happen next year, and the fact that I have a upper body that grows very slowly in proportion to my lower body and requires a lot more volume, and based on the equipment I have and my personal preferences. So this would be a absolutely awful program for people who aren't me. So unless you are me, I wouldn't advise following it. But I will talk to you about the rationale of why I'm doing it and how I'm doing it, because I think that's really what we want you to learn on our channel, is how to apply some of these broad principles to yourself, rather than blindly just copying people who you like on the YouTubes, which is typically a bad idea. And if you really need more in-depth thought on this, or you don't understand these concepts, or you want more depth, I would definitely recommend checking out my Muscle and Strength training book that I wrote with Andy Morgan and Andrew Valdez. There's also the videos, but the training books themselves actually have sample programs for novice, intermediate, and advanced bodybuilders and powerlifters, and talks about how to integrate them if you compete in both, and then you can even modify those more to your individual needs. So anyway, this is more about teaching you the whys and the hows versus the what to do. So with that huge disclaimer, let's get into it. All right, so as I said, this is a 4-week program. I've got the dates up here. every week's got its associated date. So as you can see, I'm at the end of the second week right now. It is the 6th of August here on my side of the international date line. And then I've got 5 days a week of programming, okay? I don't organize my days by body part, or even really I don't think of them as full body. I think of what movements do I want to use and what's an appropriate volume for those movements given my needs, and then what's the best way to structure and organize them on a day-to-day basis to allow me to recover. Because if I try to do too much on one day, the quality goes down and I'm wrecked for multiple days afterwards. And if I do, too little, then I have to do more on other days. So I try to find the right balance. So right now I've got a frequency of, I've got the main lifts here on the left. We'll start with that. I'm using the front squat, the bench press, the deadlift, and the RDL as my main lifts. And anytime I'm not doing those lifts, I write in what I do. For example, we've got front squat in that top slot, but the very last day you can see I'm doing a box squat. And I'll talk about why in a second. And then I've got 3 accessory slots, so I can just write what I need to in there. You can see in many places I have 2 exercises, and when they have that slash between them, it means I'm doing them as an antagonist paired set, or just pairing them together because they don't train the same muscle groups. That means I just do 1 set, rest as long as needed, and do a set on the other exercise, rest as long as needed, and keep going in that fashion. It just saves me a little bit of time that way so that I can be more efficient with my training, and it won't harm performance. And in the case where I'm doing antagonists, sometimes there's some research that would suggest that it could even improve performance, which you can check out, I believe, level 4 or 5 of the muscle and strength pyramid. Off the top of my head, I'm forgetting right now. But anyway, it's where I talk about rest periods. I believe it's level 5. Okay, so right now, as you can see, I've got the slots for these main exercises. I'm doing 3 front squat sessions per week, okay? And I'm doing bench press every day. So first you're going, oh my God, that's crazy. Why are you benching every day, Eric? Well, my upper body has been very stubborn to grow. It is something that I've hammered away at, and over trial and error and understanding more principles of training, I finally gotten to effectively grow, and I don't look bottom heavy anymore. And so a little story time for you. I benched 320 pounds. That's 145 kilos for those of you in other parts of the world besides the States, back in like 2006. Okay, and I've been stuck there for a long time. And similar Wilks score if you look at it per body weight the whole time, just for the bench press that is, while my squat and my deadlift have gone up. A huge reason for that is that I've always been kind of stuck in this mindset, whether it was from old school programs, whether that's FAT or West Side, that you're not supposed to train a movement or a muscle group more than twice per week, and twice per week is that's already high frequency. And once I got a little more educated and started questioning my assumptions and just said, really why, and didn't have a very satisfactory answer, I started playing with higher frequency programs. And once I finally went from 2 times per week to 3 times per week, it was the first time in 3 or 4 years that my bench press actually moved up. Some of you were probably thinking, well, duh, Eric, but you may have not been around in the time period I was coming up and seeing just kind of how body part training once per week was the norm, and 2 times per week was this crazy paradigm shift. So I know full body is much more popular these days, but it was not when I was coming up. But anyway, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've definitely been experimenting with higher volume, and I've found that so long as I organize it well, a very high volume of bench press has been the key to me getting my bench press up. And I'm no longer stuck at 320 pounds. I've actually benched 150 kilos in comp with a pause, and that was it wasn't that hard, so that's 331. I probably could have got 152.5, and I've actually done 155 kilos touch and go. So I've made some substantial progress. I've added about 15 kilos to my bench press since it was stuck, which is about 33 pounds, which for me, I'm not a spring chicken in the weight room, I think that's fantastic progress, and I'm pretty happy with it considering how long I was stuck. So anyway, I don't recommend 5 times per week bench press for most people, but for me, I know it is something I'm adapted to. I rarely get sore, and I can make the progress, and there's no shoulder issues. It works for me. I don't recommend it for most unless you specifically have a rationale. So here's the thing. I just came off of a powerlifting peaking block, so I was used to lower reps. So you'll notice that I'm doing 12, 10, 8, 6, 4 as my undulation pattern within the week for my bench press. and I'm starting at a load that for the first week that I thought, you know what, even on my last set, that would probably be like an 8 or 8.5 RPE. I'd be able to definitely do 1 rep, maybe 2, even on my last set. And if I just go up 2.5 kgs on that same load, as you can see here each week, for the same reps, excuse me, I'll probably be able to get it, and by the very last week, that will be a really good achievement. It's probably something I couldn't do this week. I don't think I could do 3x12 at 117 if you just asked me to on week 1. But I think it may be for the first set if I really had a grinder with a spotter there, just in case. So that's a great goal for me to hit 4 weeks from now. And I think this kind of rate of progression is pretty reasonable, even though it's relatively quick for me, because I've just been off the block of lower rep training, heavier work, and I don't have all the same adaptations I had for muscular endurance. So that will probably come a little faster than normal. And then between each day, as I drop 2 reps, I go up 5 kilos. You'll notice I keep that same pattern not only for bench press, but also for front squat. And that is because my front squat max is within 10 kilos of my bench press max. They're very close together. You're also noticing, wait a minute, you're doing so much less volume. You're only doing 3 times per week of front squat and doing 6-4-2, and here you're doing 12-10-8-6-4. The reason I have such a huge disparity is, again, my legs grow pretty well, and they grow consistently. And the front squat is not a great movement, in my opinion, for high rep work, because if you're doing it right, it should be sitting right up against your throat, kind of on top of your front delts, a little bit behind them, kind of right where your clavicles are. And I find it's hard for breathing. It doesn't feel very comfortable, and high rep sets tend to make my form break down. Again, I don't need to do high reps to get more volume in. I don't need to do a lot of frequency, and it just sucks doing high rep front squats. So I'm choosing front squats because my hip allows me to hit depth if I have a more upright back angle. Then my hips don't impinge like on a low bar squat. So I can do front squats to nearly damn full depth pretty comfortably. I just cut my depth a little bit, but it's still well below meat depth. And I'm just doing a 6-4-2, same thought process as a bench press, and just going up 2.5 kg per week and 5 kg between days. Then on the final day, I take a day off before I come back and do this. Excuse me. I do box squats, and this is just only up to a single at a 9 or 9.5 RPE, so leaving 1 rep in the tank or some load, but not a full rep. And the reason I'm doing this is just to keep my back squat strength. I have a pretty good transfer from box squat to back squat. I only do full depth back squats when I'm about 2 to 3 weeks out from a competition to preserve my hip, because every squat I do with a large back angle damages my hip pretty much, and if they're heavy, it damages even more. So I do box squats most of the year above parallel, and that is basically me keeping my back squat strength while I'm doing this hypertrophy-oriented routine, so that when I do go back to powerlifting, it doesn't make it too hard to make that transition. And then as far as the deadlift, I'm doing RDL once, right here, because the RDL is a relatively high-risk movement. I'm just choosing a load that I know I could do for 5 and be submaximal, and then I'm just increasing that 2.5 kgs every week. So by the end of the cycle, I'm doing 172 kilos for 3x5, which is even now I could probably do that, but it'd be like a 10 RPE. So I'm just hoping to get there and have it not be a 10 RPE is kind of the progression plan. And then a couple days later, I am doing deadlifts, and I'm just doing an easy little 3x3, and I'm starting at a moderate load just to give me some runway to build up. And my goal by the end of the cycle is to do 3x3 at 500 pounds or 227. And I'm keeping these rep ranges all the way throughout. The only thing I'm doing is I'm dropping my bench press down to a lower rep range for the final week, because my front squat's already low rep, and I know my next block of training I'll be doing more moderate versus kind of the higher rep stuff, like maybe 2 to 10 versus 4 to 12 on bench, and I want that transition to be a little easier so I get some low rep experience there. So anyway, basic, just kind of linear progression, starting submaximally with RDL and deadlift. Same kind of thing with the bench press and front squat, but more undulations within the week. And then I've got my accessory work. So as you can see here, I don't use a whole lot of movements. I like the movements that I think are effective, and then I just try to increase my load and volume over time. So I've got overhead press with the barbell that's standing, and then chins. These are actually pull-ups I do overhead. Bench rows, which some kids call the seal rows these days. I do tricep extension and bicep curl. These are typically either cables. Most of the time they're cables. Sometimes I'll do biceps with dumbbells, and I just do basically a hammer curl, because if I do too much supination, it bugs my elbow. Some lateral raises, that's with a dumbbell, and then some weighted chins, which are also pull-ups again, and then cable rows, and then I do a back extension where I protract my upper back and round it on purpose, protract my shoulders, round my upper back, tuck my chin down. So I'm keeping my lumbar straight, but I'm purposely rounding my upper back. I'm actually rounding my lumbar just slightly, and I'm only coming up until neutral, not really moving my spine much outside of at the very base of it. I'm really trying to make these focused on my glutes, so I'm keeping a rounded back while I'm doing back extensions. Credit to Brett Contreras for introducing me to these. This is at a 45-degree back extension. I'm really focusing on just targeting my glutes because they have actually atrophied a little bit since I haven't been able to hit depth with heavy low bar squats, I've noticed. So yeah, I call that astrophy. It's a funny joke. So yeah, anyway, back extensions, cable rows, weighted chins, overhead press, hamstring curls. These are actually single leg. That's why the load is so light. Lateral raises, calf raises, and bench rows. And that is basically all the movements I do to get a well-rounded development. So the process of the progression on the other lifts, for my overhead press, I basically have 2 days, same with chins. I have a day where I do 70 kilos, and then I have a day where I do 65 kilos. And so one is a heavier day, one is a lighter day, and you'll notice I'm basically doing cluster sets to get to a certain rep target, and then I'm just increasing the volume week to week. So for example, on my heavier day, I'm using 70 kilos, which is about 155 pounds on overhead press. I'm just adding 5 reps per week, and I get them in whatever combination of sets and reps I feel like. I just don't go to failure because it makes subsequent sets harder. So maybe my last set if I need to. So for example, I did a 5x5 with 70 on week 1, and I think I did clusters of 4 to 6 reps to get to 30 reps this week at 70. Chins, same kind of thing. These are body weight, and I'm just doing 50, 55, 60, so accumulating a little more volume there. And then if you look at the other day, I've got weighted chins where I'm adding 15 kilos or 33 pounds. The reps are lower, 35, 40, 45, and eventually 50 reps in the sessions, also clustering. And then I'm using 65 kilos on overhead press, which is about 143 pounds, and just doing more reps. So I have a higher volume, lighter load day, and then a heavier load, lower volume day, and they're oppositely paired for the weighted chin and overhead press. And yeah, they're just alternating sets on the two. Anytime you see the 12 to 15 or the 8 to 12 rep range on, for example, back extension, cable row, lateral raise, hamstring curls, calf raises, and tries and buys, that is me just doing a double progression. So I'm taking that load that I have listed and just working towards getting 3 sets at the higher rep range. And once I do, then I just go up in the smallest increment possible. I haven't been able to do that yet with any of the movements, but I'm hoping I'll be approaching a 3x15 or a 3x12 on the 8 to 12 and 12 to 15 rep ranges, respectively, with the load provided. And then bench rows, just like the other one, just like overhead press and chins, rather, I've got a set load, which is moderately heavy, and then I'm just building up reps over the week. And that is pretty much the program, guys. I just wanted you to see how I'm doing things. A little bit of a dry episode, but if you're a programming geek like me, you'll probably enjoy this. I don't expect everyone to sit through this whole thing, but I hope you enjoyed seeing how I do it. Remember, this is just the hows, not the whats, so don't just go copying this program, but this is how you might see how you'd organize your training. And again, I think there's a lot of value in not thinking about things in necessarily body part or even upper lower or full body type of way, but more so, what are the movements I want to use to accumulate my volume, and what movements do I want to get stronger on, and then what's the best way to distribute them. One thing I didn't mention is you'll notice I have 5 days per week. How many off days do I take? When do I place them? This is auto-regulated. So based on my schedule and based on how I feel, I will just slot in my 2 off days when needed. So for example, I'll often feel pretty wrecked after this first session where I'm doing 3x6 on front squats, 3x12 on bench press, and then high rep chins, and then heavy overhead press. After that session, I typically take a day off, and then I'll do day 2, 3, and 4 in a row, and then I'll typically need a day off, and I'll do day 5, or I'll just do day 2 through 5 all the way in a row and take another day off after day 5 after those heavy deadlifts. Because day 4 is relatively easy. And that changes if my wife and I want to see a movie that night, or if her schedule doesn't work for that, or if I have an appointment unexpected. So it definitely works with life. So that's it, folks. Thanks for sticking around while you look at this boring Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the insights from it, and thank you for watching episode 2 of the Helms Files.